Welcome back to another episode of the Canon on the Boomer Bust channel. I'm your host Terry, and today talking about Andor. So Andor, we are 4 episodes in, and I really love this show. Episode 4, well, I should say I loved episode 4. It really solidified the series for me so far, which I really enjoyed the first 3 episodes, but I came into this with the same trepidation that I did with Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan really, my fears came true, to be honest with you. With Star Wars, they continue to do anything connected to the original trilogy, and then with, after the sequels, they pretty much, I wouldn't say after, even before, but pretty much anything outside of the sequels with Disney has been a prequel. And so all they've done is try to go back and tell stories. And with Obi-Wan specifically, it was like, okay, we know what happens. And I'm going to be honest, with Obi-Wan, that was a terrible decision, because not only do we know what happened with Obi-Wan, but you have it in such a short time frame where we know exactly what happened. It wasn't like the original prequels. Obi-Wan, as an old man, we don't even know Jedi. Like, okay, let's go back to when he was still training. That's completely fertile ground to explore. There's so much time in between. There's so many stories that can happen. But when you say, hey, let's talk about 10 years right before the original trilogy or whatever, it's such a small time frame that there's not a big difference. There's not going to be a big shift in who he was. And to be honest, yeah, that series felt really unnecessary. It just felt like, A, to get money, but B, let's get Obi-Wan and Vader on screen together. That's all they really built it around. So coming into this, like any other prequel, you have that, not fear, but you have that dynamic of, can you make this interesting because we know what happens? And it's going to be different for every character. Like I said with Vader, like, that's silly when people say, well, you knew what happened to Anakin, but if we were like, hey, let's talk about Vader 5 years before the original trilogy, what is it, New Hope, I would get that. I'd be like, yeah, that's Vader, but this was not Vader. This was Anakin. It was a completely different person. It's interesting to see, how did he get to that point? Like, if you were like, hey, he was born with a little baby in a black helmet, breathing like that, and he's always been like that, okay, there's nothing much to explore. But the fact that this wasn't Vader, that's something he became. Obviously, that whole arc of a story is very interesting. Yes, we know where he ends up, but we want to see how he got there, because that's a huge jump. With Andor, first of all, Andor comes from Rogue One, which is the story about the moment before A New Hope. And okay, whatever. And now we're going into this character from Rogue One, and we already know what happened. And it's not like we're going, hey, this is Andor as a teenager. No, this is Andor not too long before, I forgot the exact number of years, right before Rogue One happened. So again, short time jump. We know that not a whole lot probably has changed. And so we know his motivation. Or I know why he dies. I know his motivation that got him to that point. I know that whole arc. And so now I'm like, okay, why should I care? And again, the first 3 episodes were so well made. Like, the tone, the writing, the way it's shot, all way more top notch to me than the rest of the Star Wars stuff we've been getting on Disney Plus. And so I'm hooked on that part, but I still don't care. Like, I came into it like, I wouldn't even say I don't care, like, like that's bad. I mean, I don't care as in I'm not invested, because anything to do with the stakes is just not there. I mean, it doesn't care. I don't care how much tension you build up. The stakes aren't there, because I know he's not going to die, or I know this isn't, his head not going to get cut off, his hand not going to get cut off. you restrict it because we know where his arc goes. And I think episode 4 was such a breakthrough because this was the episode where we finally step away from Andor and more to the world going around him. And I expect that to be the rest of the series because, yes, the first 3 was very intently about Andor. And again, I already know what happens to him. But episode 4 was like, okay, now that we got that set up, because I think they said it's in 3 episode arcs. So the first 3 was to set up Andor. Now that we got that, this is the setup, kind of this mission that they're on. And now we are seeing the expansion of the world. And that's one of the positive reasons to do a prequel, is that you can expand upon what we know about Star Wars already by going back and looking at areas that we didn't see. And that's what or at least I thought we would get from Mandalorian. And it didn't really. It became more of a Baby Yoda show. But I thought it was going to be an exploration of what does it mean for an oppressive regime to fall. And they do a little bit of it, as you can see some pockets trying to rebuild and Moff Gideon and all that, but they don't really dig into that too much. And you thought Boba Fett might explore that, and it definitely didn't. So this episode at least promises that this series is going to explore that. And that, to me, is an amazing idea, especially when you take it seriously. Because the original Star Wars, I mean, yes, it's the Empire, but it essentially was bad guys versus good guys. That's all it really came down to, or really how they made it come across. And they called it Star Wars, but it didn't always feel like a war. Like I said, it was just kind of our heroes versus the villains. Now, with this, and I'll give credit to Mandalorian in some pockets, but not too much. But this is the first series where it was like, let us show you that this is a war. And it's funny because I heard some of the people I watch that review things and all that, I hear that they get a lot of comments complaining that it's too political. And I'm like, what do you think a war is? What do you think an empire is? What do you think the stormtroopers are? What do you think George Lucas got all this from? Like, it's a war. War is political. And so, that's what I was thinking of. The prequels is the other place that we saw that. I was thinking more of the Disney Plus stuff, but the prequels was the first time we really dove into it. And it made it seem, well, obviously the Empire didn't exist yet. So it was still kind of good guys versus bad guys. But that, episode 1, 2, 3 arc was completely showing you a larger conspiracy that the Jedi clearly didn't see happening. And now this is giving us a little bit of how was it during their prime, during their heyday, even though they're still building the Death Star, but still they have a chokehold on a lot of areas of the galaxy. And so you got private security places doing security work because the Empire can't be everywhere. And now they screwed up this whole thing. I forgot the guy's name that was trying to be, Captain Hero and tried to go after Andor, got more people killed. So now the Empire has to come in and take over. And they're like, y'all messed up. So we got to have full control. But then we got senators, plotting these names is escaping me, so I'm sorry. But Skarzar's character, he's part of Rebellion, but he has a whole different character that's front facing to the rest of the world. And so he's working in the shadows. So it's very espionage, it's very spy thriller, but it's also Star Wars. Like, they're building up this plan to raid this garrison and get this money, which again is part of the whole wars thing. They're trying to cut off some of their funds, fund their rebellion. But also, it's a Star Wars mission, kind of shoot 'em up type thing. It's a heist, but there's still a lot of political thriller going around everything else. And so I loved episode 4 because it showed me a series that's not driven by Andor, but it's happening around Andor. And that is what I need because I'm not invested in Andor. I know what happens. But now they're giving me other people to be invested in. And now they're expanding the world. And they're really giving us, and it's funny because it's a little weird to say, they're expanding the world while also zooming in. You're zooming in to see what it looks like on the ground for empire to take over, to slowly take over what was once a free republic. And so you start to see how the oppressive regime is spreading and the ways that they are, getting people on board with it, which I love because it shows the scale. You see, and we don't know who this person is for it was the ISP or something, the blonde lady that's trying to figure stuff out. We don't know her motivation, but either way, we see she's trying to climb. We see the guy that was Captain's hero, he was trying to climb. And we got all these people with their own personal motivations, seeing the empire as a tool to get power, to get money, to get, whatever, notoriety. And it's not even necessarily, I agree with the ideology of the empire. It's they're in power, so I'm going to play within the system to help myself out. And you see, again, how really a regime that isn't that powerful becomes powerful because it presents power and it attracts other people to it. And they don't care about, what they're doing. They're just doing the things that's going to get them what they want. And it becomes this growing oppression. But yeah, so the writing was crazy. The writing was amazing. It was just sharp. The dialogue was great in this episode. The way they really show like the callousness of an army and how some of those high ranking people would be and how cutthroat it is. And so overall, I'm really into Andor. I was into the production and all that value in the acting. The acting is great too. I was into it the first 3 episodes, but now I'm into the story and it's really hooking me. And I was into it the first 3 too. I don't want to make it seem like I was bored or nothing. I was like, man, this is good. It's just every time we get to a moment of tension with Andor, I'm like, it loses me because I know what's going to happen. I know that he's going to be okay. And so now that we go to episode 4, and hopefully we're going to continue to expand and bring in more storylines and show the empire, now I'm really invested. So I'm enjoying it. But let me know what you think. Go to the comment section, share it around, get the conversation started, thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, if you heard it here, it's official canon.